I think the thing that interests me most right now in the craft that I'm working on is listening and the value of understanding and knowing how to listen. And it was one thing I really had to learn how to do as an actor. And one of my early traumatic experiences in an acting class, which I'm sure you've all had a traumatic experience. That's part of it. It was after I went to San Francisco State, and I went to a conservatory for a couple of years called the American Conservatory Theater. It's in San Francisco. They have a conservatory, and then they also do plays. They have a professional company. At that time, they had a repertory company that did the plays and the season, and then they had a conservatory. So I was in the conservatory in my first year, in my first class. I mean, I graduated from college at this point. The very first scene that I did was with my acting partner, Todd Robbins, who I just saw in a production at the Geffen. He did this play called, he did a performance called Play Dead, and he's a magician. So it was a very kind of macabre magician show. Anyway, that's what he's gone off to do. But at the time, we were both doing our first scene. And we were sort of instructed to, this is the very first acting class, first scene, you know, pick a scene, 5 minutes with a partner. Go into a room, do the scene. Go where you want to go, move where you want to move, and then come in and bring it to the acting teachers. And they had a thing called Friday Scenes where all the teachers and all the students from all the classes would come in together like this. You do your scene, and then the acting teachers critique you. And we did our scene. And they said to me, they said, look, you know, you're used to kind of going up there and doing your thing, but you're not really taking in what's happening. You're not taking in your partner. And what he's doing is not affecting you because you've got it all, you know, you're just doing your thing. You're not listening. You're not really taking in what's happening. And I can still feel the sick adrenaline rush of just, well, I was embarrassed. I was humiliated, but they were right. I needed to learn to listen. So that was enormously helpful to me. And it's still to this day, when I go to see a play, or when I go to a movie, or watch television, it's often the people listening that are the most involving. That's one of the reasons I love the theaters, because you can watch the person listening as much as you can watch the person who is talking. And of course in film, the camera's choosing who to look at. But if you think about great moments in movies, often that you remember, movies that you like or that moved you, often those moments are people in silence, taking in what's happening. And then, you know, for me, that also just resonates into my life because I have 4 children. And take a big breath. My kids are now 14, 17, 20, and 22. And most recently, I would say in the last 5 years, what I've been trying to learn is to listen. Because it's the most important thing you can do as a parent. But of course, when you're the parent, you think, I've got to tell you what I know. I've got to tell you what to do. I'm worried about you, and I've got to sort of basically instruct you. But of course, that doesn't really help. What helps is to listen. And just as I was driving here, I have satellite radio in my car, and there was a BBC program on, the most extraordinary program about, and of course this particular program, this is BBC International, but it's focused in, this particular program was focused within United Kingdom. And there was a hairdresser from Belfast, another hairdresser from London, and a young man who was a playwright, and another woman who was from the Samaritan Hospital. And they were all discussing how the government had funded a mental health care project focused on people who work in hair salons. I am not kidding. It was so profound and beautiful. And particularly this one woman who was from Belfast, because she was truly a good person and she had gone through this program, and they were discussing about how people with mental health issues, maybe even very serious problems, serious depression, maybe even depression to the point of concern about taking your own life, often don't have somewhere to go to talk. And that often people go, and when they're having their hair cut, or they're in a barber shop, a man in a barber shop, or a woman in a hair salon, often the people that work in these places hear more honest conversation from the people that they're treating than professionals do. And that you open up to the person, you're sort of in a, you're in a cocoon, you're sitting in a chair, you've got a thing draped over you, you're giving yourself over to them, they're cutting your hair. And so these people were talking about how there is this phenomenon that people really open up to them. So they were talking about listening. And the woman was talking about, this woman from Belfast was talking about, well, you go through life and people talk to you, but you're not really listening to them. You're not really taking in what someone is saying. As she said, you're not really listening properly. That was the word she used. You're not really listening properly. So she had been trained, and it was her instinct as a person to listen properly. Or another way of talking about it is to say deeply listening. So maybe if you're deeply listening, it's because you're listening to not only what you're hearing, but what's underneath it. That's the idea of that is receptivity. So as actors, I think we do a lot of focus on projecting, right? We learn how to move our bodies, we learn how to make sound, we learn how to present ourselves, stand on a stage, sing or act. But a lot of acting is taking in. It's being receptive. So I'm going to be talking the whole time here. You're not going to be talking very much. But I can see you. So at the same time that I'm trying to get across something, I'm also looking to see what is happening. The people that are more contemplative, the people that are more serious, the people that are nodding, the people that are nodding off. No, I met a friend of mine. A friend of mine came to dinner the other night. She was introducing me to her fiance, who's an actor, and he had been to see the Ruth Draper monologues that you referred to, this one-woman show that I did. And he was kind enough to be able to admit to me that he had had a little bit of a nap during the show. No, but it was okay, because I have had some of my best naps in the theater. I won't tell you what show. So I understood. And he has a little girl. He has a 6-year-old. He's tired. Believe me, I was tired for about 10 years with my kids. Now they're older, so they want to sleep as much as I do. But it's not that way when they're little.